Okay, in this one, I'm going to show you three really nice looking, but very easy, simple, beginner friendly render ideas that you can use. So this is the kind of video I would have loved when I was first starting out, because this really shows some of the crazy stuff that you can do with 3D software without actually really knowing what you're doing that much at all. So this isn't for like absolute beginners, but you really don't need to know that much to be able to do this stuff. So when I was a beginner, I'd often kind of refer back to these ideas because they're so simple, but they look really, really good if you just kind of follow the steps I'm going to show you here. So let's just get started with the first one, which is this kind of render, which is probably the most common render that I've seen, at least in the kind of Instagram space that I'm in, which is this setup of like reflective floor in a dark environment with like this emissive thing in the middle and maybe somebody like standing there. The first thing I want to do is open up, well, no, the first thing I'm going to do is actually add a plane, just a surface for the ground. So this will be our floor here, and I'll just go straight into render view. Now my world settings are this just gray thing. So to open up the shader editor, I'm just going to pull out, just move your cursor to the side of the screen, pull open a new window, and then you can just switch this to shader editor, right? And then N on the keyboard will just show and hide any side menu like this. So we'll just get that out of the way. Now I want to switch this to world because I want this to be a dark environment. So I'm just going to disconnect the background so there's just nothing. So it's just pitch black. And I'll switch back to object and we can start on setting up the lights and everything. So the first thing I want to do is actually to be able to see something. So we need some kind of light in here. Now there's really unlimited ways that you could have a light source in here, but I'll just show you just some idea by just bringing in a plane, and then we're just going to throw an image on there as an emissive texture. So let me just add, I guess you can't even see what I'm doing. Let me do that again. Shift A, plane, bring that up, flip it this way. Let's go on this plane, hit new on the materials here. And then if I go to rendered view now and just open up this emission panel and then increase the strength, this will become emissive, of course. But I think what I want to do is, this floor is bothering me a lot right now. So I'm going to come back to this. Let's actually make this floor that kind of reflective material I was talking about. So I'll hit new on this as well. And then I'm going to make the color actually dark. And then I'm going to lower the roughness to 0. This doesn't actually matter, but I just want to show you what this is doing. So moving the roughness to 0 will, of course, make it fully shiny. And moving the roughness up to 1 will slowly make it more and more rough until you get to like fully all the way this, right? So we want to use a noise texture to actually influence that. So if I run this into here, we can actually tell it that some parts are going to be fully not rough at all, and some parts are going to be 100% rough. The way you do that is using a color ramp. I'll just drop that in here, color ramp running in there, and then you can just kind of increase the contrast of what this noise is doing. If I just preview what this node is doing by control, if I hit control shift and then click on one of these nodes, that will just show you exactly the output from this node, what it's doing. So these black and white values are determining which parts of the roughness, or like how that influences what goes into this roughness socket right here. Okay, so I want to increase the scale of this, increase the detail, not all the way, but just a decent amount, and then increase the roughness again, not all the way, but just a decent amount. And then I can just kind of just control this exactly right here with this color ramp, what this is doing. So I might just kind of mess around with these values until I find something that looks nice, but something in there is going to be fine. Okay, so this is the basic setup, right? It's something bright here, and then something that looks reflective here. And then you can kind of just do whatever you want from there, but I'll just continue this to make it look actually somewhat more interesting than a white square. So what I might do actually is drop in an image texture. So this is a bunch of free downloads I've done from Unsplash. Unsplash is just a stock photo website where you can download any stock photos of like just random pictures, but these actually can look really, really nice depending on how you use them in Blender. So I'll just take some random image. Let's do this like Illuminati thing right here and drop that into the shader editor of this texture. So I'm clicking on the white square. This one is selected on that material. I can just call this emission, and I'm dropping that image into here. Now I'm going to bring down the timeline. I don't actually need that because I'm not going to animate this. I'm going to bring up another window in here, and then let's switch this to the UV editor. So let me run this image here, this one, into the emission color. And then I also want to run this into the alpha. So the alpha is just the transparency. So again, we can use the brightness values of this image to determine which parts are opaque and which parts are transparent. Now it's stretched out. The way to fix that is just unwrap it with a quick cube projection, and that will just kind of fix that. And then you can of course select that on the UV editor and just move this around however you want. And it's the same controls as the viewport, so it's A to select everything, G to grab, S, scale, R, rotate, all the same stuff. So the point I'm trying to make here is you can use anything in here. I'll just quickly set up some random example of me messing around with a texture, and you can of course change this out for whatever you want to put in here. So I might just take this, let's just do something fun with it. Let's just inset this, delete that interface, X face, right? And then let's flip this like 45 degrees this way. And then maybe let's duplicate it up like this. And then I'll pull this. I don't like it how it's overlapping on itself, so I'll just kind of move it slightly on the y-axis, just like a millimeter, so it's kind of not intersecting with that other one. And then let's go back to render view, and let's kind of just deal with this from here. You could just leave it like that, or I might apply the rotation so that when I unwrap it, it actually has the right orientation. So I'll just apply rotation, and then let's do another cube projection so that it actually unwraps it this way at 45 degrees rather than the other way. If this is complicated, just don't worry. Like I said, you can swap this out for whatever you want. I'll show you a really even more simple way to do this after, but I just want to show you some of the fun stuff you can do with this technique. And then let's take this. I'll just kind of put it wherever. And maybe I don't know, maybe I want to mirror this left and right. So that means I can just make this really interesting like mirrored pattern by just kind of moving this around to wherever I want. And then, whatever, I could duplicate or delete that one, maybe put this up over itself, move it a millimeter again, just so it's not overlapping. And now these are both kind of having that same effect. And you can just move this wherever you want. And I really want to stress the point that this is like, I'm not saying copy my exact settings here. That's why I'm kind of rushing through this. I'm just saying do a thing that looks kind of interesting here, and you can get some really, really interesting results by just having something glowing in the middle. That's really the point I'm trying to make. But I'm just kind of taking this a bit further to show you some fun stuff you can do. And then from there, you could do whatever, like, I don't know. Let's take this. Let's duplicate it out. I'm going to not do it from the 3D cursor. I'm going to do it from median point. Scale that up. Let me separate this by selection. To bring up the separate menu, it's P on the keyboard. Separate by selection. And then this, let's like, to avoid this like shrinking like that, you can just go turn on this options menu right here and then correct face attributes. And now any edits you do in edit mode will not stretch the texture. It'll just kind of continue it. So I could just do that. Doesn't even matter if you have that on for that because it's so small anyways. And then you could bring this in, like, let's just add like a nice frame around this by duplicating this a few times. And then, I don't know, put it up here too. Line it up. So, doesn't matter what you do here. Just get like some kind of cool thing here. And then there you go. And then this can be over here. I don't know. It's just something, right? It's just some glowing thing. Now, from here, I definitely want to have volumetrics. So I'm going to add a cube in here. Just a regular cube. Scale it up kind of over everything like this-ish. Something like that. Let's display it as bounds. So go to this orange square tab. Viewport display. Display as bounds to get it out of the way. And then I want to create a new texture on this, delete the principled, find a volume scatter node, and then plug that to the volume. Density we can set to like 0.02-ish in this case. That number is going to be different depending on how strong you want it and the kind of lights that are in your scene. And let's turn up the anisotropy so that the glow is closer to the emission object. It's kind of like that. And you can see how this becomes a really, really powerful setup. Because pretty much anything that you put in here will look good, right? I'm just kind of showing you some random weird design that I just made here, but you could do anything here, right? One more thing is you can, of course, use a color ramp running into where this is going into the alpha, and that can really help determine what parts you want to shine through and which parts you don't want to come through. And then you can take a mix color node. If you're using the image texture, drop that into where it's going to the color, switch that to multiply, and then just make this like whatever color you want, right? Yeah, there's unlimited possibilities here, and it always looks super nice. So something like that, and you can of course move this around and do whatever you want, right? And so once you have something like that, you can just throw in some random other objects or somebody like standing here, and that will often look really, really nice. Maybe throw in some of the archways that I gave away in the free pack. Let me just find those free arches. Let's throw in like this thing over here. I'll put a link to this free pack of arches below, but I'm just throwing in some random models here. It doesn't matter what you put. So I'm just going to join this all together, maybe move it back a bit. I just set the resolution to landscape, just 1920 by 1080. And then this could just kind of be anywhere in here. It doesn't matter what you do with this, but point is, I'm not even going to finish this. I'm going to leave it as is and just kind of render this and just show you this in rendered, or this after being rendered. But the point is, this is a really fun setup, and it's you can get a lot of cool stuff with it. All right, let's move on to the next one. Okay, the next idea for an easy render that I want to show you is this kind of concept where you just take any object that looks sort of cool on its own, you throw it in the middle of the scene, and then you just use like a spotlight to light it like that with just light coming from the side or something. And then you just kind of have like any kind of environment around that. And if you set it up like this, you can actually get some really, really nice results with a pretty simple scene setup. Okay, so for the object that I want to have in here as like the main thing, let's just do like a skull or something. This is some random free skull from CG Trader or Turbo Squid or something. I can't remember where. I've had this for a while, but random free model of some random skull. Doesn't matter what you put in here though. It could be literally anything. So I'll just put that kind of dead center. And I want it to be like big. I don't want it to be small. I want it to be this kind of like exaggerated Beeple kind of style, weird giant object in the middle. Let's go 24 millimeters on here. And I also want this to be like, we'll just do the Instagram resolution of 4,000 by 5,000. Okay, so we got that there. I'll just leave this kind of cropped on the view thing here, but it's fine. So we need a texture. Should probably use more than one texture, or I could just not do that. So let me just bring in one for now and we'll see how that looks. And I'm just going to do a really quick and dirty example of how this kind of works. So I'm not too worried about quality here. This is really just a demonstration, not me making a final amazing artwork. Anyways, this is a texture from Ambient CG, just a free 4K texture. You can just use whatever website you want. I'm just using Ambient CG, and I'll just bring in normal, color and roughness. And okay, we need to unwrap this. We'll just do a quick cube projection, and then this I can switch to the UV editor. And I don't think I really need to do much more than that. It's going to be fine for now. This looks terrible, but we'll fix it later. Link material to the floor, scale it up, maybe by 2 or 4. And then let's just get this kind of right there. Now we need a sky in the back. I guess we don't need it, but that's just kind of what I'm feeling. So I'm just going to throw a plane way back here on the camera settings, increase the view distance to 1,000 meters so we can actually see it. New texture. Let's grab a sky. So I'm just going to use, again, another image from Unsplash. This is just some random stock photo from Unsplash. Doesn't matter what you use. Just drop any sky. You can just go out and take a picture on your phone too. That totally works. Run this into somewhere in here. Mainly the emission. Base color doesn't really matter. Okay, so that's going to go there. I have the compositor turned on here, but I'm going to turn that off so it's not glowing. And then it might actually work better to use a more overcast sky, but I think this will be fine. So we're just going to have this here, line this up so it's like roughly like that. And then let's throw in some volumetrics for just to kind of glue this all together. So cube, scale, up, new texture, delete this. Add a volume scatter in there, 0.02 maybe. And then increase that to anisotropy so it's like, just makes it look a little more cinematic and nicer. Scale this up so that it kind of goes off into the distance a bit more, and maybe just pull the top up a little bit more. And then I want to actually increase the volumetric light bounces because that will just help it kind of fill in a little bit nicer. And let's throw in our spotlight like I was talking about earlier. So just going to have that here. Let's increase it from 0 meters to something. Increase the blend, and then power, just whatever. So we obviously don't want that in the file like this, so I'll just move this out of the way. And let's just kind of get this somewhere over here. Could use a sun lamp too, that could totally work. And it would probably be less awkward for the light in the back. I might just duplicate this over here and kind of jankily do that. That's fine. And maybe let's just, on this floor, we'll just kind of increase that. Could even add puddles. An easy way to do that is just, let's make this texture unique by clicking this button right here so that it only affects any change I make to this one doesn't affect the other models with that texture on it. So to add puddles, it's very simple. We could just take a noise texture. Same technique as the first one I just showed you, but we're going to kind of mix it into the texture here a little bit nicer. So we need a mix color node. Drop that into the roughness first of all, switch it to multiply, and then I'll just run this into slot B. Same technique as before, color ramp in here, increase that contrast, and then I also need to increase the scale, detail up, not too high, and roughness up, not too high. Okay, so that is now affecting the roughness, but the problem is the normal map is actually kind of introducing, I guess, another form of roughness because this is actually just adding a bunch of bumpiness here. So you can see it's working if I turn this to 0 and then just kind of increase this. You can see it is actually working, but it means you can't use a normal map anymore. The fix actually is if you just run this color ramp into that normal map strength, that will actually kind of help this effect really come through. And you can see this a lot clearer if I bring this camera down to the bottom. You can see if I zoom in here, we're actually getting, I might do this separately. Let's run the noise in here and then use a different color ramp. And I can actually just tweak this a little bit better now. But you can see now we can actually get the normal map coming through on the dry sections, but it can be perfectly reflective on the wet sections, which is exactly what I want. So I actually just moved some things around, deleted those arches, and then just took this skull and then duplicated the same thing, just smaller around itself. So I think that looks a lot nicer. It's much more plain, but I think that's fine. It's fine being minimal sometimes. The sky in the back here, I just swapped this one out. This is one of the ones I took and put into one of the packs in the environments course I made. You can just use any sky, like I said, from Unsplash or whatever too. It doesn't really matter where you get these, but that's the one I'm using. And then that, I think, just makes it look a lot nicer. So, and plus it's a beginner video anyway, so we're just making like easy stuff. The point is, you could do some really nice stuff by just having like a basic model and like kind of putting it in a nice surface with like a sky in the back. Okay, the next really easy idea I want to show you is this kind of idea of taking any object, scattering some sort of thing, either like some pillar or some other anything really, onto it, so that you have this kind of cluster of all these models together. And then you can kind of just duplicate that around the scene into this weird abstract formation that pretty much is always going to look really cool. So let me just show you that. Let's run through this one more time. So I'm going to get, first of all, let's do, doesn't matter, any object here. I'll just do a cube. We're going to go to geometry nodes. And then I'm actually going to duplicate this cube, Shift D, and then I'll scale it up like this. And this will be our object that we scatter. Let's apply the scale, and I'll just throw in a quick bevel modifier, just so that it's not perfectly sharp corners. Okay, so something like that is going to be fine. Move that over there, just make sure the scale is applied. So to scatter this onto this, we need to hit new on the geometry nodes, right? Geometry nodes, new. We need to distribute points onto faces. So if we don't do this, it's just going to, when we instance it, if I just instance on points, it will just instance, if I just grab an object in here, object info, run that to the instance, and I'm just going to pin this and then grab the instance object as this, right? So if I do that, so we're saying, okay, this object here will be instanced onto the points of that other object, and there's only so many points on that cube, so it's only just doing even instances on there, right? So if you can see it's just putting one of those things on each vertex of that cube. If we want to randomize it, just drop in a distribute points on faces. Now it's adding random points, and it's not really taking into account the vertices. It's just kind of randomly scattering it everywhere. So that's what we want there. However you want to scatter one object onto another, does not matter. Just do that. If you want to just duplicate it 50 times into a blob, you can do that too. It doesn't matter at all. Okay, so I want to randomize the scale here. So I'll just drop in a random value, plug that to the scale. Okay, and then we can do between 0 and something, or like 0.1 and something. And let's just lower the density a little bit. It's a bit much. And then I'm just going to scale this up like this, apply scale, so it kind of refreshes that. And then maybe increase the random scale a bit more, decrease this, just trying to find something that's going to look nice. Okay, so the point is, get something like this, maybe make this a little taller. And this can be used to just kind of spam everywhere and make something that's really complex looking, but is actually very simple. Let me show you how I might do that. And by the way, of course, just like all the other concepts I'm showing in here, I'm doing a very simplified core version of this. You can swap out these things that I'm showing here. Instead of a cube, maybe try something else, try something more complicated. Try using some intricate pillar or some other thing you make that looks cooler than just literally a cube. But I will show you that this could be quite simple and still look nice. Okay, so let's set the camera to, again, I'm just going to do 24 millimeters because it's just easy. We'll go 4000 by 5000 again, even though I think these will be 1920 by 1080 in the end, but it doesn't matter. Render view. And I need a texture on here. I'm actually going to take the same texture I used in the last environment I made. So we'll just take that plane, the ground plane, bring that in. I'm going to delete the other floor. So it's the same texture I made in the last environment. I'll just reuse it in this one because it's easy. So yeah, that's just going to go on there. Basic, regular texture. The lighting will kind of hide the fact that it's repeating a lot, so it doesn't matter. And what I'm going to do is I think just duplicate this a bunch of times into some cool kind of formation. I might move the camera up here like this so it's looking down. And then as a guide, because I think the idea I have is like kind of move this into like a square formation. I don't even need a guide, actually. I'll just kind of wing this. So let's just do this. Alt-D, rotate 90 degrees. Now pressing Alt-D is actually important here because if you press Alt-D, it will create a linked duplicate, meaning it will run much smoother when there's a bunch of them than if you press Shift-D, because if you press Shift-D, it kind of makes them all their own separate individual unlinked object. And it'll just slow everything down a lot quicker if you do that. So I'm pressing Alt-D to duplicate, linked duplicate, and we can just kind of move this into some square formation. Now, these are all the same rotation, which I'll fix in a second. Let's actually flip this to go 45 degrees from the camera, maybe. I think that's going to be cool. Scale this. Don't need to scale it down. It's fine. And then, of course, I think I want to like rotate these kind of randomly so that these are not the exact same orientation and scale each time. So I'm just rotating 90 degrees, rotating negative 90 degrees, rotate 180, rotate negative 180. Doesn't matter, just flip these around randomly so that it's not the exact same model or the exact same rotation of the same model every single time. Okay, so there's that, and I can just take any one of these, maybe duplicate that kind of like this, and just kind of get this around. Again, still pressing Alt-D to save, just to save processing power. Okay, and you can see where this is going. Like, we could just make some really complex looking thing out of this. Doesn't really matter what it is. Let's go like 16 millimeters. I think that's going to be cool. And let's take one of these for here. Okay. World settings, I might take this out and then just use a spotlight in here. Let's put that over here. Just make the power something, right? Increase the radius, increase the blend, and then just kind of light this nicely from the side like this. I might make this kind of a more dry material, but it's actually fine for now. All right, we need volumetrics. Again, same setup as before. Cube over everything, display as bounds. I have a shortcut for that, so it's normally, again, you go viewport, orange square tab, viewport display, display as bounds. If you right click this box, then assign shortcut, mine's D on the keyboard, and that just brings up that menu there. Okay, so we'll go here, boom, delete this, add volume scatter, point that in there, 0.01, scroll in and out here to refresh it. This is because the camera view distance is not high enough, so we'll just increase that to like 1000. Okay, this needs to go up, and this needs to go down. So again, I'm not going to go and make a super amazing polished render. I'm just going to show you a really basic kind of abstract setup of what you can do when you have one cube scattered onto another cube. because even that can actually look quite nice. And let's just kind of tweak this lighting around until I get something that looks a bit nicer. Maybe let's take another one and scale it way down, and then like scale this up here. And of course we can go back into the geometry nodes since these are all still part of this. And we can say like, okay, let's go increase the density. This lighting really could be better, but I'm kind of speed running this, so I'm not too worried about that. I will try and fix it though. You get the point though, right? Like you just kind of do a thing here with some cubes and just kind of figure out some lighting that looks cool, and you can get some really nice stuff. I like that right there, except this is kind of in the way. It's a bit annoying having this as bounds because now I can't really see what I'm doing at all, but I think if I just kind of do this, it'll be fine. And then we could put some, I don't know, cube in the middle, rotate 45 degrees. Maybe let's put the same material on this material. And we could adjust the material from here too. Like we could make it darker or make it metallic or do a bunch of stuff, right? Like maybe let's take a mixed color, drop that in here, switch it to multiply, and then multiply in some like blue or something. That might be nice. Not really feeling that though. Of course, I would suggest taking your time and like not just doing the most basic thing possible, which is what I'm doing, but you get the point. Like scattering these objects around can really look crazy sometimes. So I might just take the roughness back up. We could just lazily do this with a color ramp on the end and just kind of crunch this way. I guess it's already too... Yeah, I'll just take that factor down. There we go. That's better. Anyways, I'm going to mess around with this, and I'll just come back when I've got this a bit more figured out. Okay, so this actually looks a lot cooler with just a few different spotlights here. Instead of one shining kind of really bright, I just turned the spot size down, and then you can see I just duplicated that one around a few times so that they're kind of just lighting up different areas like this. Like there's one kind of in the foreground here. There's one main one that's in the middle, and then there's kind of supporting ones just around the side. It took me like 2 minutes just to kind of figure out where to place these, just moving them around until it looks cool basically. And then for the middle thing, I just kind of duplicated the same pieces, made them smaller, added a couple more cubes. Anyways, I'm just going to make a few more tweaks like this and then just kind of render this out. Okay, so I just messed around with it some more, and you can see the point I'm trying to make here. Like, just by duplicating this same object over itself a bunch of different times and then using some interesting lighting, you can get some really interesting stuff. And again, I'm literally just using a cube scattered onto another cube here. Like, imagine what you could do if you actually used something really interesting here instead of this, and then kind of spent more time than me actually tweaking this into something really interesting. Now I did switch it back to the panoramic lens. So I'm just on fisheye Equisolid, and I might just bring this back a little bit more like this. Maybe bring the camera a little closer again, and that's going to be fine. I don't think I need depth of field or anything, but yeah, anyways, you get the point I'm trying to make, right? Like, some basic objects just kind of scattered around can look really, really nice if you just spend most of the energy on like camera and lighting. Okay, so that was 3 pretty simple render ideas that you can try out. Now I just want to keep stressing the point here that I'm not trying to show you exactly step by step what you should be doing exactly. I'm trying to show you general themes and ideas that you can follow and manipulate and tweak to fit your own style. And yeah, just take the overall themes that I'm showing you here, don't necessarily recreate exactly step by step the exact render I'm showing you in this video. That's not really the point I'm trying to make. So yeah, none of these are super refined. Obviously, I made all of these over the course of this one video in a day, so these are not amazing renders, I know. I'm just trying to demonstrate a point that you could do some interesting, cool stuff that isn't super complicated. So I hope that was helpful, and hopefully it gives you some ideas. Yeah, that's it. Bye.